This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant, or Chris, or Chrissy, to select family members. If we're not related, don't try it. Here's what we got for y'all. The ripple effects of George Floyd's death are still being felt in the community where he lived and where he died. We'll tell you about two Minneapolis business owners caught up in those ripples. Plus, we'll tell you how a New York City community is responding after an Asian American woman is attacked in broad daylight. But first, here's what you need to know right now. An Amazon warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama has become the epicenter of a labor movement as the nearly 6,000 employees there decide whether to unionize. The vote counting began today, and the results might not be known until later this week. The vote itself is the culmination of a campaign that started up last summer when employees reached out to the retail, wholesale, and department store union to complain about grueling working conditions. Since then, political figures including President Biden and even Republican Marco Rubio have all expressed their support for the unionization effort, along with labor champions like Bernie Sanders.
What I say to Mr. Bezos, why, when you have so much money, more money that can be spent in a million lifetimes, why are you spending millions trying to defeat an effort on the part of workers here who want nothing more than decent wages, decent benefits, decent working conditions?
Okay, so that comment from Senator Sanders alludes to the pushback this effort has received from Amazon so far. The second largest private employer in the US has reportedly held informational sessions on the case against unionizing at the Bessemer warehouse. They've also been highlighting the fact that Amazon offers its workers twice the minimum wage in Alabama plus benefits. And whoever is running the official Amazon account had no problem beefing on Maine with folks on Twitter who brought up allegations of poor working conditions and other criticisms. The stakes are pretty clear here. If the union effort succeeds in Bessemer, it could spread to other warehouses across the country. A long-awaited report from the World Health Organization on the origin of COVID-19 was made public today, but it doesn't reveal as much as many people hoped. A team of WHO scientists traveled to Wuhan earlier this year to conduct a joint investigation with China to try and learn more about the start of the pandemic. In their report, the authors say the most likely scenario is that the virus infected bats, then jumped to another animal before infecting humans. A lab leak is still thought to be highly unlikely, but there's no absolute conclusion in the report, just four different hypotheses.
We will read the report and discuss, digest its content and next steps with member states. But as I have said, all hypotheses are on the table and warrant complete and further studies from what I have seen so far.
Something else interesting, researchers couldn't determine if the outbreak actually started at the wet market in Wuhan. One WHO scientist believes the virus could have jumped animals at a wildlife farm, which are part of a unique project where the Chinese government takes wild animals and breeds them in captivity for food. Some of those animals were then sold at the wet market. During the probe, researchers say the Chinese government failed to provide some crucial data, which means the information they received is incomplete. Last year, an AAPI investigation also found the Chinese government was strictly controlling all research into its origins. Scientists say the key to preventing future pandemics is fully understanding the origin of this one. Less than half of all Americans now say they belong to a church, synagogue, or mosque. That's the lowest that figure has ever been in the 80 years since Gallup started asking that question. Experts say it is possible some of the decline in church membership over the last year can be attributed to the coronavirus, but that decline began a couple of decades ago, and there are at least a couple other trends driving the drop. One of the factors seems to be generational differences. According to Gallup, 66% of adults born before 1946, also known as traditionalists, belong to a church. 58% of baby boomers do. For Gen X, it drops down to 50%. Meanwhile, just 36% of millennials do. Another factor would be a lack of religious preference. Over the past 2 decades, the percentage of Americans who do not identify with any religion has grown. Those who don't feel a close pull to a specific faith are less likely to join a synagogue, mosque, or church. Keep in mind, the poll doesn't necessarily mean fewer Americans believe in a religion. It just means that fewer people may feel the need to belong to a specific place of worship. We are in day 2 of the trial against former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who's accused of killing George Floyd a little less than a year ago. Floyd's death sent ripple effects throughout Minneapolis and are still being felt today. Newsy's Jamal Andrus is on the ground covering the trial in the surrounding community. He tells us about how the owners of two businesses located where Floyd was killed are caught in a difficult position.
I haven't missed the payroll since I opened this business, and I'm not going to miss the payroll.
At the intersection of 38th Street and Chicago Avenue in Minneapolis, Ivy Alexander is barely keeping her business running.
We're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
For Ivy and her husband Dwight, business has been sporadic since George Floyd's death, who was killed just steps from their restaurant, Smoke in the Pit.
It brought an influx of people down here, and so we could hardly keep up with the business the first couple of months. But then after, that started trickling off, and we realized that we were kind of in a square, blocked off here.
Barricades set up by the city block each entrance to this intersection. Occasionally, you'll find volunteers monitoring the entryway. And while activists say all are welcome here, some patrons don't feel that way.
Dwight had to walk a block or two or more to go get our supplies. Garbage was piling up because they weren't letting the garbage collector come in.
As soon as we opened, all the odds was against us. Ever since we got the location.
And the Alexanders aren't alone. Cedric Steele, co-owner of Just Turkey Restaurant, says people can't find his restaurant since it's behind the barricades.
I get a million phone calls every day because people don't know how to come to the restaurant.
As the trial of Derek Chauvin gets underway, both Alexander and Steele say the only thing that will reopen the intersection is justice for Floyd's family.
I don't blame any of the volunteers down here. I don't blame the activists. I don't blame anyone down here because we are all in agreement of what needs to happen because of this social injustice.
The city of Minneapolis says it is working on plans to improve the intersection. For activists here, justice requires the city to meet a list of 24 demands. This includes the completion of the trials of all 4 officers charged in Floyd's death. Until then, a handful of empty storefronts and a vacant Speedway gas station stand as reminders of what could occur if things don't change for business owners.
We're hoping that that there is a solution. There is an end date that they will open up the street because we want the street open. We need the street open. We're not going to give up.
Jamal Andrus, Newsy, Minneapolis.
When you're back, we'll tell you what else Lil Nas X has going on this week. You know you're having a busy week when your song hits #1 on Spotify and you get sued all before Wednesday. Here's what's trending. As if feuding with some folks of faith ain't enough, the latest project from Lil Nas X has angered another powerful cultural force, the Nike Corporation. Nike is suing the company behind Lil Nas X's Satan Shoes, a limited run of modified Nike sneakers featuring a pentagram and a drop of human blood. Nike isn't involved with the Satan Shoes and argues that the project dilutes their brand. Nike's main issue here appears to be brand confusion. Since the sneakers still bear the Nike swoosh logo, some consumers could end up falsely believing the company is involved with these sneakers. Lil Nas X himself isn't on the hook for this lawsuit, but that hasn't stopped him from tweeting through it. Bitcoin is gaining even more cred as a currency thanks to a new feature in PayPal. The checkout with crypto option will allow PayPal users to make a purchase by selling their stored reserves of cryptocurrency for real money at checkout. The service currently supports Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin. PayPal has been a big supporter of normalizing blockchain money. Last October, the company started letting users buy, sell, and store cryptocurrencies on PayPal's platform. PayPal says crypto transactions won't face any additional fees and should work with each of the company's 29 million retail partners. The pandemic might be on its way out, but it's not over yet. New COVID numbers out of Florida mean another surge is on the way. The state's reporting an average of 5,000 new COVID cases a day. That's up about 15% more from where it was 2 weeks earlier. Florida also reports the highest levels in the country of the more contagious B.1.1.7 COVID variant at over 2,000 cases. These reports come just over a week after spring break parties flooded Miami Beach, prompting curfews and crackdowns. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says the spike in cases was anticipated and points to low hospitalization and death rates despite the increase in cases. The state's Department of Health estimates only 15% of Florida residents have been fully vaccinated. As of April 5th, everyone over the age of 18 in the state will be eligible for a COVID vaccine. Even as the country focuses its collective lens on hate directed toward members of the AAPI community, people are still being attacked. And it happened again in New York City. Newsy's Kat Sandoval tells us more about the Asian American woman who was attacked and how the community has responded. There's video of the attack, so it's our job to warn you this might be graphic for some viewers.
In Midtown Manhattan Monday, a 65-year-old Filipino-American woman on her way to church was kicked and stomped on the head, not once, but 3 times, while the perpetrator reportedly made anti-Asian statements, telling her, "You don't belong here." The video shows a building staff member closing the front door after the attacker fled.
Seeing that security guard not even step in to help and instead close the door on her. I feel like that's how the rest of Asian Americans feel, that our voices don't matter, our lives don't matter.
The building owner suspended the staff involved pending an investigation, and the woman was hospitalized with serious injuries. The NYPD has opened a hate crime investigation, and the suspect, who appears to be a person of color, hasn't yet been found. There are reports he is a homeless man often seen wandering the neighborhood.
White supremacy and racism can actually manifest in people of color, and that is something that I feel like people disregard, especially from a darker skinned person. I think that is a status quo that people need to unlearn.
This comes amid a year of anti-Asian incidents, nearly 3,800 reported since the start of the pandemic. For Newsy, I'm Kat Sandoval.
A trial involving college and university students across the country is trying to figure out just how far vaccines can go in battling the spread of the coronavirus. COVID vaccines are an important tool for ending this pandemic, but there's still questions about what all they can do. For example, does a vaccine prevent people from spreading the virus? Newsy's Lindsay Thies, who has made a habit out of informing us about this pandemic, tells us about a national study aimed at answering that critical question.
Are you ready?
College students across the country are helping scientists answer a big question. Can the COVID vaccine stop someone from shedding virus, spreading it to others?
Knowing whether or not the vaccine takes that extra step to prevent transmission in the community means folks can start to see what that end of that tunnel looks like.
If the coronavirus is something that's going to be persistent, possibly yearly thing like the flu, I think the research is going to be really important.
Enter Prevent COVID U. Just launched, the study will include 12,000 students from 21 universities. Everyone in the trial will eventually get the vaccine. Researchers will vaccinate half the students right away, while vaccinating the other half 4 months later.
It was a great opportunity for me to get vaccinated myself, while also, helping with this study that will benefit the nation.
Volunteers have to do daily nose swabs, get tested twice weekly at an on-campus saliva monitoring program, and complete daily questionnaires about symptoms on a smartphone app. They'll also have their blood drawn occasionally.
I'm pretty interested in research, and I'd love to be a part of it and help in any way I can.
It's a lot of data, but the findings will help capture infections in real time and track the amount of viral particles in a person over the entire course of an infection.
1, 2, 3.
Work that these participants are happy to help with as they think about what they look forward to post-pandemic.
Getting to see my grandparents regularly.
Definitely traveling.
Just coming back to life where I don't have kind of those questions in the back of my head, and it's not scary to go anywhere.
Scientists hope to report results by fall 2021. Lindsay Thies, Newsy, San Francisco.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag NewsyInTheLoop. It's where you can catch me before the show, after the show, and in that random moment in the middle of the night when you wake up and think, what did I miss on Twitter? That can't be healthy. Before anyone smelled what he was cooking, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was Dewey, a little kid growing up in Hawaii with a wrestling lineage that gave him an incredibly athletic, extended family. A new series called Young Rock sheds light on those early years. Newsy's Casey Mendoza spoke to one of the stars who portrays Young Rock's uncle, the so-called eighth wonder of the world.
What are you looking at?
We remember this legendary 7'4" wrestler as Andre the Giant. But for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and his new biographical sitcom Young Rock, he's Uncle Andre.
Dwayne was so articulate and detailed about his feelings about Andre. You know, he called him Uncle Andre, gave me that last little bit of sort of character influence that I needed to kind of really hone it in as we went along.
Actor and former NFL player Matthew Willig plays the iconic wrestler, who died of congestive heart failure in 1993. Other famous wrestlers portrayed in the NBC sitcom include the Iron Sheik, Junkyard Dog, the Wild Samoans, and The Rock's own father, Rocky Johnson.
The soul man, Rocky Johnson, that was him.
The crown is in the wall! The characters honor the history of professional wrestling, and the show portrays both the difficulties of working in the industry and the community it created.
You know, it was really important for Dwayne to have people realize that this is what he grew up in. He grew up in a crazy sort of wrestling world.
What is the monster's name again?
E.T.
Andre was so sort of lovable in his personal life. He was this sweet giant. I said, when you're playing something iconic like that, you have this sense of getting it right, doing the best for him and his legacy.
Casey Mendoza, Newsy, Chicago.
We're coming to the end of Women's History Month, and all month long, companies have marketed to women pretty heavily in advertisements, sometimes with pretty powerful and uplifting messages. But Newsy's Kayla Beek tells us how some of those ads can miss the mark.
When it comes to campaigns aimed at empowering women,
you got that thing. That hooping, soccer playing, game-changing, oh so resilient, AA outing, butterfly stroking thing.
For all women have done, and for all they will do.
We see many grace our TV screens and social media feeds each March, timed perfectly to coincide with Women's History Month.
We're committing to doing more to help you and women all around the world feel more confident every day.
As heartwarming as some of these ads may make us feel, what are messages like be confident or be proud really conveying to the potential consumer?
Those are all important aspirations, but they very rarely do they actually talk about the kind of structural ground that encourages women to feel less than confident in the first place.
Instead of focusing on the individual, media experts say so-called femvertising is most effective when it addresses institutional issues that lead to sexism or gender bias.
When you cheer for me, you cheer for me and me.
Secret is always a favorite of mine because I think that sweat and athleticism and sports are all really great spaces in which to discuss gender equality and positive dynamics for girls in particular.
She Media, a woman-run digital media company, coined the term femvertising in 2014. According to its latest research, consumers think it's important to support brands that align with their own values. They don't want companies to just use feminism as a tagline. They want them to be walking the walk off camera too. We've seen these ads deployed as lip service before. KPMG released this ad on women breaking glass ceilings in 2015. Meanwhile, the Professional Services Network was fighting a gender discrimination lawsuit alleging it denied promotions to women and penalized them for taking maternity leave.
If we as consumers care about gender equality, care about racial diversity, we should look at the messaging, but well beyond the messaging, the packaging, the product itself, to the company that is generating profit from that product.
So how can companies go beyond using feminism as a marketing strategy? For starters, they can run these types of advertisements more often during the year.
That time of the year, huh? Our day, the one day to celebrate us.
It's like we forgot all about women or Black people because there's not Black History Month or Women's History Month. It's gotten pretty tacky and embarrassing.
To compartmentalize it in 1 month already suggests that this is something that is sort of an ephemeral political cause for a corporation rather than something that they would be working on year round.
And brands can go beyond media visibility and shine a light on other organizations helping women. We've already seen some of this. Nike invested $500,000 in Black Girl Ventures this year to support Black and brown female entrepreneurs. And Google committed $25 million in grants to nonprofits helping address economic inequities faced by women and girls. It's initiatives like these that femvertising experts say can really make a difference when it comes to empowering and uplifting women.
Recognizing and making visible organizations whose main purpose is to challenge structural gendered inequalities would be a move in the right direction.
For Newsy, I'm Catherine Beek.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow for more In the Loop. Same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.